on the upper right is that you have upper ram liftoff. That's controlled by the valve. If you keep it shut, it operates normally. If you open it, it lifts it off earlier. Control some of the speed. The slow pressure release adjust. Well, I should go in order. The low pressure adjust switch. That's how you run when you run in half tonnage. The low pressure gauge. Low pressure control is low manual or high automatic. Since it was turned, that was probably the mode we were in. High automatic is where you'd want to be to run that gauge. Low automatic runs that. High pressure gauge on and off, that simply turns the gauge on and off. I always leave it on. Some people like to shut it off so you're not always cycling the gauge every time. This is the pressing force. This is a pretty important adjustment here. Just like the low pressure switch adjusts, if you turn it all the way out, you have no pressure. You turn the remote switch, differential switch way out, turn it all the way in, you'll start increasing that. So if you're pressing and you're pressing against powder, as you turn that up, you'll move the set point up to where you're pressing at 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 pounds. The slow pressure release adjusts. This allows the pressure to come off slower. So if you're at 70 tons, bang, the press might try to drop it all at once. You use this adjustment to kind of slow down the release. Speed control is in conjunction with the knob over there that asks for speed control on or off. If you turn it to the plus, the rams move faster and automatic. If you turn it to minus, they move slower. Withdrawal adjusts pressure. So we don't use that a lot. If you turn this all the way up and you have to use it, it takes away from the pressure you can press with, so it gets a little confusing sometimes if you're using a force float. But for the most part, it's the force that it pulls the lower ram off the part with. And normally if you were in a situation where it's turned all the way out, it wouldn't try not to eject because it just didn't have enough force to pull it down. It normally stays in a spot where you're using a significant amount of force. In normal operation, the upper ram comes up and that will pull off separately, so you're not using a lot of pressure at the same time. Counter pressure is how much is holding on the die. Some dies, some powders, depending on how they press, the die will actually sit there and drift. So you could be watching a part press, and all of a sudden everything's moving, and if you don't do anything, the powder is going to come squeezing out of there. And you turn the counter pressure up to prevent the die from drifting. And normally that's a set it and forget it setting, but it does change depending on geometry and size. Counter pressure gauge on or off, same thing, you turn the gauge on or off. Pilot oil pressure, you run it in operate, gauge or unload. If you want to see what the pressure is, it should be 400 pounds. When you turn the pump on and gauge, the needle will come up. You can unload the gauge because it's got an accumulator if you want to unload it overnight. If you run and operate, the gauge won't bounce all the time. But the only thing to worry about here is if you unload it and come the next day, it doesn't want to run because it's trying to unload the pressure off.